Out at sea, a fisherman named Jack came across an unusual sight, a solitary abandoned building emerging from the ocean's surface. Its presence in such a remote location piqued his curiosity, prompting him to venture closer. The building, battered by time and weather, stood as a silent sentinel with a story yet to be told. Compelled by a mix of intrigue and caution, Jack decided to explore the building, unaware of the historical significance of what he was about to uncover. Jack hesitated when he started to steer his boat in the direction of the strange building that just seemed to appear out of the sea. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. It was already very late and night was starting to fall. He was actually on his way back to shore at that moment, back to his hotel, and Jack knew that the wisest decision was to just stick to that course. But this building was just drawing him in somehow. Maybe this building was private property or something. He already had trouble enough in the States. He did not need any more in France. He had wanted to go under the radar here as much as possible, posing as a simple fisherman on a one-man boat. Getting into the strange fort was a big risk he should not be taking, but he was already turning the wheel of the boat. When his little boat had made it to the side of the building, which was much larger up close than he had expected from a distance, Jack saw that the first row of window openings was actually quite high up. He could maybe climb the walls, but they were made really slippery by all the algae that had been growing on them for what could be decades. He also needed to find the best window opening to use. Most of them had bars in front of them, but Jack quickly spotted one that was busted up enough for him to probably be able to climb through. But how was he going to reach it? He would need to get a bit creative, and luckily, it just so happened that breaking into buildings was one of Jack's specialties. What he had on the boat was a lot of fishing nets, and all those had a very strong rope keeping the edges together, and so he cut them from one of those nets and tied a large metal hook to the side of it. Then he started to just throw the hook in the direction of the window over and over again. After about half an hour of trying and Jack completely burning his arms out, he finally managed to hook something in the window and the rope was secured. When he finally made his way into the building, it was even darker than he had anticipated. He used the flashlight on his phone to check around the room, and he quickly noticed that every movement swept up a layer of dust. It was clear that nobody had been here in a long time, and the room was filled with a lot of interesting items. There were a lot of big things covered with old tarp. When Jack pulled it off, he saw a lot of old cannons. Suddenly, he started to better understand what this building was used for. It was most likely a fort of some sort used to defend the coastline from enemies. But these cannons were not the only strange thing Jack was going to find in this building. Jack wanted to go to the next room. His mind started to race with other things he could find here and potentially take, but the door leading out of this room was locked, and it did not look like he could just break it down easily. Jack started to go around the room. There had to be a way out of here. He started going past the walls and quickly noticed that not everything was as structurally sound as it was when it was built. Some bricks had gotten a bit loose, and with a few firm hits, they actually managed to break loose. This was Jack's way out of here. He started meticulously taking stones out of the walls until there was a hole in the wall big enough for Jack to crawl through. He had already been shining his flashlight through it beforehand to see what was on the other side. The room was mostly empty by the looks of the things, but the door leading out of that room was actually open a bit. Jack squeezed his body through the hole and then quickly made his way to the door. He slowly opened the door to see if there was anybody or anything there waiting for him. But all he saw was the center of the fort, almost like a big arena. Jack's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. The room was an improbable blend of history and modernity. Ancient military helmets lay scattered near sleek, unfamiliar gadgets that hummed softly in the gloom. This bizarre collection stirred in Jack a sense of wonder and confusion. How could such contrasting eras coexist in this forgotten space? Each artifact told a story. though the narrative was fragmented and enigmatic. Jack felt like a detective, deciphering clues from the past and present. As Jack delved deeper, the dimming light of the setting sun cast elongated shadows, transforming the mundane into the surreal. Shapes morphed and danced on the walls, blurring the lines between reality and illusion, and Jack felt himself slipping into a world that was both familiar and utterly alien. As Jack ventured further, his flashlight beam fell upon an object that made his heart skip a beat. Tucked away in a shadowed corner lay something completely unexpected, its presence inexplicable in this ancient fortress. His mind wrestled with the decision to involve the authorities, a battle between his inherent curiosity and a sense of civic duty. With a heavy heart, Jack conceded to his conscience. He reached for his phone, feeling the weight of responsibility. In the dim, eerie light, Jack dialed the number, his fingers unsteady. His voice, when he finally spoke, seemed to him both alien and distant, a stark contrast to the silence he had grown accustomed to. The fort's walls absorbed his words, leaving Jack feeling more alone than ever. As the phone call ended, a tide of doubt washed over Jack. He replayed the conversation in his mind, each word amplifying his uncertainty. The realization hit Jack like a cold wave. He could be arrested for this. Images of handcuffs and prison cells flooded his mind, fueling a growing sense of panic. His heart raced as he imagined the legal consequences, the thrill of discovery now replaced by a deep-seated fear. This wasn't just an adventure anymore. It was a potential path to incarceration. Jack's decision was made in an instant. He couldn't risk capture. He rushed back through the fort's corridors, his footsteps echoing loudly in the empty halls. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, all focused on escape, on evading the grasp of the law. As Jack's boat cut through the water, the lights of the fort receded into the darkness behind him. Jack steered his boat with utmost care, zigzagging through the waves to obscure his trail. As he navigated away, the image of his discovery lingered in Jack's mind, haunting him like a specter. The solitude of the sea became Jack's only companion, a vast emptiness in which he wrestled with his conscience. As night deepened, sleep became an elusive stranger to Jack. His mind was a tumultuous sea, waves of doubt and fear crashing against the shores of his consciousness. Back on shore, the French police, intrigued by the cryptic nature of Jack's call, sprang into action. Officers coordinated a meticulous search operation, piecing together the scant details provided. Maps were spread out and search areas marked as they prepared to scour the coastline and the surrounding waters. Police boats sliced through the dark waters, their powerful beams cutting through the night. Teams of officers scanned the sea, eyes trained for any sign of Jack's boat. As the search continued, the police began piecing together Jack's last known location. Calls were made, data analyzed, and routes traced. After days of evasive sailing, Jack's luck finally ran out. The police, through relentless pursuit and keen investigative work, cornered him on the open sea. Surrounded by a sea of flashing police lights, Jack knew resistance was futile. With a heavy heart, he cut the engine of his boat and raised his hands in surrender. Once in custody, the police formally accused Jack of trespassing and causing property damage. These accusations stung, frustrating him deeply. He tried to explain the innocence of his intentions, but the words seemed hollow even to his ears. The reality of the legal implications of his adventure began to loom large, overshadowing the thrill and curiosity that had initially driven him to the fort. Handcuffed and escorted away, Jack's head hung low, his heart heavy with regret. In the interrogation room, the air was thick with tension as Jack faced his interrogators. Their scrutinizing gazes bore into him, each glance a silent accusation. The investigators' expressions were unreadable, their demeanor professional yet distant, setting the stage for a confrontation where every word would count. As Jack recounted his story, the reality of his predicament became increasingly clear. Despite his truthful narrative, the mounting evidence painted a damning picture, leaving Jack isolated in his cell to reflect on the choices that led him here. The contrast between the confinement of his cell and the freedom of the open sea was stark, forcing Jack to grapple with regret and resolve. During the interrogation, an officer mentioned Fort Boyard, revealing it as both a historical monument and the site of a television show. Jack learned that his trespass had occurred in a location of cultural significance. Further revelations shocked him. The eerie room where he had felt a presence housed sleeping tigers used in the show. This startling detail underscored the fine line between curiosity and recklessness, making Jack aware of the risks in his pursuit of adventure. In the end, his real-life escapade had intersected with the imaginary world of television in the most unexpected way. Despite the legal consequences, Jack couldn't ignore the uniqueness of his experience, a tale interweaving history, discovery, and unexpected dangers, blending the past with the present in an unforgettable way. Let us know what you think about this story, and don't forget to share it with your friends. It might inspire them and brighten their day.